Today I'm going to be talking about community and what it is. My last video was all about Tzniut and modesty, and a lot of that has to do with the social construct of where you live. So today we're going to be talking about that because it's just really not as simple as it sounds. Hi, I'm Haber-Goldstein. I run an organization called Questioning the Answers, where we question all the answers we were ever given about Judaism, cut through the noise, figure out what God wants, and do that. So today we're going to be questioning what is community, or what is Das Yehudis, and welcome to my channel. The Torah term for community is Das Yehudis, and what does it mean? So community really means social construct, societal norms. What is normal in your society to do? So if it's normal in your society to take off your shoes before you go into someone's house, then that is what you're going to do in your life. If it is not normal, you're not going to do that. And that is really the idea of what community and Das Yehudis and society norms are. I really want to point out something very important. Community ends up being different for every single person. And therefore, you really can't use community to label people or to say, oh, she's not doing what's right, or she's promiscuous, or she's super uber religious. In general, we should never be judging people. But in my experience running this organization, I have had people tell me, well, what do you mean? I mean, doesn't she want to know that she's doing the wrong thing? Like, shouldn't I help her? She's sinning. I should be there for her. Or I've seen people talk about other people in a judgy way, saying like, oh, well, she was dressed like that, or she was doing this. So the thing is that with community, first of all, community is such a personal aspect, even though it says community and it doesn't sound like a personal aspect. It is so personal to each person that you really don't know anything about that person's community and if what they're doing is okay or not. And second of all, we're not the Torah police. We were never given the job of being the Torah police, so it really doesn't matter. Like, let's just not judge. Let's just be kind to people and not judge them. So how is it possible that community is a personal aspect, right? So the thing with community is like this. Community is a hybrid of so many different aspects of your life that you're going to figure out each one, bring them all together to create this beautiful little social construct, social norm that you've created for yourself. And what that is going to be is a hybrid of all these different items. First one being, what does your soul connect to? So the Torah was given on Har Sinai. Torah was given on a mountain. Jews were all around the mountain. Jews saw the Torah from 70 different perspectives. And there are 70 different amazing, accurate, beautiful ways to be a Jew. Now, what this means for you is that you have to figure out which point of view was yours, right? Your soul was there. So you have to really connect to your soul. You have to explore Judaism, explore all the different aspects. I'm actually in the middle of writing a book called 70 Faces, which explores each different facet of Judaism. And you have to figure out which one of those, which strains really speaks to your soul and really feels true. Not the easiest one. Not the easiest one. The truest one. And it's not going to be the same for everybody, because some people are going to connect to a more passionate Judaism. Some people are going to connect to a more book-based Judaism. They're 70. So you really have to figure out which one of those really makes you feel in your soul, in your gut, this feels right. For example, I grew up Haredi in Israel. That's where I was raised. I grew up in a system that was incredibly, incredibly rigid. Not any topic of mental health, no emotional health, nothing was really worried about in the schools that I went to. Really what was worried about was that I keep these really, really rigid, strict laws. That didn't work for me. I will tell you that I have friends who have grown up in different worlds and have loved that. I will tell you that I have friends who grew up there and love it. I didn't love it. It didn't work for me. I needed to know the meaning behind every single thing I did. Like, I really needed to know why. What does this do for me? So I went and I started exploring. I found Hasidut. I didn't like Breslov. I didn't like Chabad. I love all those. I love the teachings, but I didn't connect to it in a way like, this is my soul. And then I found the source of it, which was the Baal Shem Tov. And I was like, everything that he says, I feel. And there's not a name for it. I don't know. Chassid, just a generic chassid. But that is where my soul just felt like, yes, this is it. And once you find that, you can start viewing everything through that lens, and that's your community. So that is really like the main component of what your community is, but it's not all of it. once you have that main component of what your soul is connected to, which by the way does not have to be the same as your spouse, it's really okay if it's not. Once you have that, now you have the other one. What shul you go to? Who's your rabbi? What school do you send your kids to? What denomination are they? What are your neighbors? Because that matters, right? What community, physical community do you live in? What's your family like? What is your spouse like? All of these things really add up to become this hybrid. So you have the community that your soul chose, which is the biggest chunk. And then you have all of these different elements of your life coming together. And when you create this hybrid of what is normal in this beautiful hybrid that you have. So if you have a community where all of these little things adding up together, you wouldn't wear a wig, you would wear a scarf, then you shouldn't wear a wig. But on the other hand, if it's the other way around, right? If you're Chabad and you're in this world where they don't really wear scarves, they really do focus on wearing wigs, then you should wear a wig, right? So it really depends on your community, right? And you can even have some communities that are directly opposing to each other, and they can both be accurate for the community that they are supposed to be in, right? So that's why community, although public, really is personal to each and every person. Here's the biggest question though for me was, can I switch communities? So if I was raised in a specific community and I take this hybrid of all the things, but like I was raised in this specific community, am I allowed to throw away the tradition of my parents and become something completely different because my soul connects to it more and that's where I live now and that's why I'm married? Am I allowed to change? So before we answer that question, let's go back into the history of when the Jewish world started breaking into communities, because originally it wasn't like that. So when the Torah was given, it was given as a whole to the Jewish nation. And while there were different, divisions, there were the Shvatim, right, the different tribes, while we had all that, really for the most part, we were all in agreement about what the Torah said. We had Moshe Rabbeinu, we had Yehoshua, we had the 70 elders, like we had this kind of transmission of Torah that we really all agreed for the most part, not everything, I mean we're Jews, but for the most part we all agreed on one kind of main way to keep the Torah. However, what ended up happening was that we were sent into exile and Jews were dispersed all over the diaspora for 70 years. So these 70 elders that we had went and traveled to each city in the diaspora and led each city. There wasn't enough. It went from 70 to 120. It became Anshe Knesset Gedolah, right? We changed from the Sanhedrin to the Anshe Knesset Gedolah. And in each city, in each establishment of Jews around the diaspora, we had a leader, somebody who was teaching all of the Torah, somebody who was being the Moshe Rabbeinu of the city. Now, what happened is that we lived there for 70 years. And then we came back to Israel. We came back to Israel and there was one person left from the Anshe Knesset Gedolah. And this was Reb Shimon HaTzadik. So they all come back to Israel and Shimon HaTzadik is trying to rebuild and, everybody's trying to get back into things. And what's happening is that every community that's coming back is coming back with a different understanding of the Torah based on the culture that they were surrounded by, based on the understanding that they had of the Torah, because there was no internet, they weren't connected. So they didn't have this general idea anymore. Now there were 70. So now, or 120 even, right? So now we had this issue of multiple different sections of Judaism saying different things, and some of them were opposing, and they didn't know what to do. So Reb Shimon HaTzadik set up a new Sanhedrin. But as a group, they came up with 3 guidelines. And if you met this 3 criteria, you were considered a valid community. It was fine, and what you're doing was fine. And those were that you have to trace it back all the way to Moshe Rabbeinu, meaning rabbi to student, rabbi to student. You have to be able to trace it back to Moshe Rabbeinu. The second thing was that you cannot contradict the Torah. If you are contradicting the Torah, it is wrong. And the third thing was that it has to be accepted by a large group of people. You cannot just come up here and decide, right? It has to be something that was accepted, not just one person, not just 5 people, largely accepted by the Jewish people as a legitimate community. So we had these communities and they came back and they're setting themselves up and they're getting back into the swing of things and they have children. These children grow up. And some of the children felt like maybe they would fit in more with this community, with that community. This is a conversation that actually I had with my father. I was like, were we allowed to switch? And my father said something very interesting. He's like, you're allowed to switch, you're not allowed to shop. So you're allowed to switch communities. You're allowed to say, this community isn't working for me. Let me go figure out which community works for me and go and find a community that works for you. But you cannot try and find a community that works for you, and then when you want to do this, then you find a community that works for you for that, and then a week later, when you want to do that, you find a community that lets you do that. You really want to keep the Torah and have a connection to Hashem and really feel like you're spiritually connected. Find your community and make a home there. Aseh l'charav, make yourself a rabbi, have a mentor, have a spiritual leader, it could be a rebbetzin, doesn't have to be a rabbi, and figure out what it is that makes you feel like you're home, what it is that makes you feel like your soul is home, and what community most portrays that, and then pick that community. That's your community. And then that, plus all the hybrids that we spoke about, is your little personal special community. Now, for the final and most important part, what does this have to do with Tzniut, with modesty, right? We have a concept in Torah called das Yehudis, which is that our modesty laws are not really so concrete. There are a few that are really basic, which is like your heart, your armpit, your upper legs, right? We spoke about that. Beyond that, it's really like, it's kind of like up to like our understandings, right? So really, it's a social construct. The idea of modesty is to not stick out as a promiscuous person. So if you find your community, once you have that hybrid personal community, and you do what's normal in that community, you're not sticking out as a promiscuous person, you're modest. By that definition, you're being modest. So we do have the basics, right? We do have the basic erva that we have to cover, no matter what community you're in, even if you're on the beach and nobody's wearing anything except bikinis. It doesn't matter. You need to cover your basic erva. But beyond that, it really is up to what is socially normal in your community. Pants, hair covering, sleeve length, skirts, socks, shoes, earrings, nail polish, nose rings, the whole shebang. Totally up to your community. If you like this video, it would really help me if you comment, if you like, if you share it, if you subscribe, any of those things.